this is the kind of year that studios like Netflix, and to a lesser extent Apple, because Apple does things very differently than Netflix, but Netflix especially, and we're going to talk about the fact that Netflix is raking in more dollars year over year than movie studio or movie theaters, and that this is not the first year that happened. That happened back in 22, but people kind of panned it largely because it was the first regular post-COVID year for theaters. I've still got the financials pulled up for Netflix, so we're going to go over that. But Netflix, this is an opportunity for them to help the theaters fill the gap. And I can't imagine there hasn't been some conversation between, people like Adam Aron, the CEO of AMC theaters, and places like Netflix. It's like, look, you've got these major movies that you're producing, like serious theatrical blockbusters, but you're just putting them straight to streaming service. And Netflix has done it a couple of times before where they've released things into theaters because they want that Oscar-capable film, right, for more prestige. This would be a great year for them to step in and do that and announce some things because I'm sure there's a lot of wide open weekends, 2-3 weekends in a row that you could slide a Netflix film into, eventize it. It doesn't have to make a ton of money, even if it just makes $100 million domestically, $50 million domestically, another $50-100 million globally. You can help theaters plug the gap, and obviously it's good for Netflix because they can recoup a lot of the raw costs of actually producing these titles. I think Netflix is a little scared of putting one of their products into a theatrical release because they've never had to contend with having to then spend a ton of marketing on a film, right? They usually make a film, they advertise it straight up on Netflix, which is minimal cost to them. And then that's it. It drops on Netflix. People watch it. You put something into theaters, you've got to commit to a big marketing budget. And I think that's something that's probably a little bit scary for them. But, things like big action movies, Extraction or Extraction 2, where they had Chris Hemsworth. I mean, those were theatrical worthy films. They can do that. But, I mean, you look at this chart here, a new horror movie opens. And look, horror movies, what do we always talk about? This is where studios like Universal and Sony and even Warner Brothers, this is where they can really make a good bit. I don't know if they have the budget on here. I don't think they do. But Night Swim, this is another one of these films that probably was shot for $20 million. I've got to pull it up. I thought it'd be on here, but it's not.
I bet that's generous.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably $15 million, this kind of thing. But look, it's already raked in $17 million on its opening weekend. This is not a movie that has to make a ton of money. If this thing finishes up with 75 or 80 million, that's pretty much a win for
$15 million production budget is what the LA Times is reporting.
There we go, 15 million. 15 million.
Man.
This movie makes $30 million, and it's basically broken even on its production. Now, we don't know how much they spent on marketing, but usually with stuff like this, unless it's a major horror IP like The Nun or The Conjuring or things that usually rake in hundreds of millions of dollars, they're not spending, probably but maybe 40 million, if even that, on marketing a film like this. They usually rein that in. But again, it's Universal, so guess what? When it gets out of the theaters, Amazon Prime writes Universal a big old fat paycheck to get this onto Amazon Prime.
The only way I see the theaters being saved at this point, Valiant, we need a Tay-Tay T-Swift, Travis wedding. The only problem is the New York Times says she's gay, so I don't know what they're going to do about that.
So we mentioned Star Wars earlier, and you brought up Star Wars. This new Star Wars film may not even turn in money.
Okay. Well, let's think about that for a minute.
So
let's think about that because let's say you're Disney, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You've watched what happened to the Marvels. You said, that didn't work so well. Now we got this Rey movie coming out, supposedly. Now who's behind the Rey movie? Well, we got Kathleen Kennedy, and she just did Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny. She had a real good hit with Willow. And who else is working on this? Well, we got Charmin Obaid-Chinoy. Well, if you look at her resume there, not so much in the way of sci-fi movies or, well, frankly, any kind of pop culture movie. Seems like they've assembled a real team of success. So then you got to start thinking, well, how low can it go? And this is apparently not going to be tied to any of the other Star Wars characters, so there's no incentive for anybody to go unless you are an aging out Reylo fan. Good luck with that.
Right. Commercial viability, right? That's always the name of the game, or at least it should be. I mean, if you've got a property that has a limited audience, you've got to be able to calculate how much can we spend to make a product to serve this audience based on the size of this audience and make money.
They can't make a Rey movie with a budget low enough to make money. That's what I'm saying. And Valiant, think about it this way.
Mm-hmm.
If Indiana Jones, which prior to this last film was one of the top 10 franchises, okay? Mm-hmm. Indiana Jones, it's up there with Lord of the Rings in terms of greatest trilogies. It's not as good as Lord of the Rings, but it's up there. It's really, really good stuff, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If Indiana Jones tops out at 330, where does Rey land? And I'll submit to you, Rey will struggle to break 300 million. So you figure out how to make a Star Wars movie that can have a production budget and a marketing budget where they make the return on investment they need at 300, which I don't think they can get 300, but drop it there so it's easy math.
If they had to budget it like a good example would be Ghostbusters Afterlife. 75 million, keep it tight, and really control the marketing budget.
She's never leaving Tatooine on that budget.
No,
we're just staying there.
That's the problem. Look, it could be done. The question is, would Disney actually do what they need to do to achieve it? And the answer is no. Now, Iger's talked about reining in budgets. We'll see what that really looks like in the next few years, and it's going to take a few years before we actually see the fruits of that.
I don't know if you've watched the video I did yesterday, which has just exploded, and I think rightfully so, not because of me, but because of the source. Same source that helped us exclusively break that Rey was coming and it was going to happen during the Star Wars celebration. Mm-hmm. But I am hearing, cannot confirm this because it's not been decided yet as far as I know, but I'm hearing that Disney is actually looking at mitigation strategies here, that they would be open to putting this on Disney Plus, or at least releasing this on Disney Plus day and date as the box office to try to get away from this PR disaster. Because if it goes to Disney Plus solely, well, then you're fighting against Nielsen, right? You're not, the box office is much more visible than Nielsen numbers that come out 6 weeks later. If you put it out day and date, you've at least got a PR spin to say, well, folk, it's the biggest movie ever on Disney Plus. And then you put italics at the very bottom since Hocus Pocus 3. But nobody reads that bottom sentence anyway.
Well, that's just it, right? I mean, I think if they do a dual release day and date, I think that could be even worse. I mean, to me, that's a complete admission of failure, and you knew going in that it was going to fail. To take a Star Wars, the whole point of this was getting Star Wars back into theaters. The whole point of this was when Bob Iger came back, immediately one of the first orders of business in November of last year was to get Star Wars back into theaters. Get a new movie, a Rey movie, put Grogu, Baby Yoda in it, put Chewbacca and R2-D2 and all the stuff that we discussed last year.
Right. But then that got screwed up. You know how it got screwed up? The strikes. Mm-hmm. So now they can't get the Mandalorian stuff finished in time. So then that means they can't put Grogu with Rey. I've talked with some people who, I can't tell you that they absolutely know what they're talking about, but I can tell you that I think they know some stuff. Rumor and speculation, but here's what I think. I think they're screwed in every possible way because the strikes meant that the Mandalorian seasons got pushed out. That means that we don't have the Grogu and Din Djarin story wrapped up. And that means that if you throw Baby Yoda with Rey, then everybody knows that Baby Yoda lives and all the anticipation is gone for the Mandalorian stuff. They're screwed in every possible way. They've got how much did The Rise of Palpatine make at the box office?
You mean in the grosses?
Yeah.
Just over $1 billion.
Yeah. Think about this. You, after 7 years, you're opening salvo, and maybe the last film that Kathleen Kennedy ever works on, don't know.
Mm-hmm. But
you come back after 7 years. The prior movie that you released was $1 billion, and that was considered, lackluster. That was a disappointment.
Very much.
You're going to come out with a Rey movie where there's no real villain that we can possibly conceive. There's no original trilogy characters to connect this with. There's no way you're going to come close to $1 billion. And that is only going to remind the investors who don't care. They don't give one darn about this thing. But they notice numbers, and if the Ray movie comes out and the box office is 400 million global versus 7 years ago when tickets were 40% cheaper, we got $1 billion. There is no win here. They have literally boxed themselves in to every possible path as a labyrinth of failure.
That's true, but you're forgetting the fact that what they're trying to do with this movie
Put another gay diverse woman in it. Make it more fucking lit.
So, I mean, if you take that into account...
I stand corrected. Now I get it.
Yes, thank you.
I see the path forward. I have seen the light.
Yes.
It is filled with estrogen and, well, we'll leave her there.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.